Well, this is going to be a short video on what powers the 1959 Chevrolet Bel Air. It's a 250 horsepower turbo thrust 348 V8. See on the engine decal there. 348 turbo thrust. It's a 250 horse version. Has a Rochester square bore. It originally had a Carter square bore for the standard shift engines. I took it off and rebuilt it, and while I was waiting for the rebuild kit, I threw this Rochester 4Jet I had on, and it runs beautiful with it, so I've just left it on. It really gives me no issues. This is what they call a square bore, meaning all four of the venturis are the same size. This is your primaries, these are your secondaries. You run off these under normal driving condition, you start getting them throttled, and these start working. When I say venturi, you look down in the carburetor there, aluminum colored thing, that's a venturi. That allows the air to velocitate. It's like the wing of an airplane. It allows the air to velocitate and move quicker and easier through the carburetor. It draws the fuel out from the center of those. They kind of look like a barrel, that's why people call them barrels, or four, like this would be a 4-barrel. It's really truly a venturi. It's a 4 venturi. Rochester calls this carburetor a 4-jet. I don't know if you can, I guess the writing isn't going to read there. But it is a Rochester 4-jet carburetor. This car also has a road draft crankcase ventilator. The California emissions would have had PVC. The road draft uses a vented oil fill cap. That would be where the air goes into the engine when you're driving down the road. That's the oil fill for the engine. And by the way, this engine's the only thing that's been done to this particular engine is the valve cover gaskets, and the front crankshaft oil seal has been replaced. Other than that, the engine's never been apart on this car. We get back to the California emissions, there would have been a PCV valve here where the power brake check valve is. And when it would have went to a hose to the behind the distributor there. Well, I don't think you're going to be able to see it. Whoops. Yeah, there's not going to be able to see it, but then you probably can see the road draft tube. It's kind of behind that harness there. And the road draft tube goes down. There you can see the road draft tube. And that goes down, it's cut on a bevel on the bottom, so when you're driving down the road it creates a vacuum in the crankcase and draws the vapors and all the blow-by from the piston rings out of the crankcase. That's how the crankcase is ventilated on these old cars, so they weren't very earth-friendly. The PVC drew the crankcase ventilation back into the intake and burned it through the engine where it went out the tailpipe. This, it just comes out the road draft tube, and when you'd stop or shut the engine off, you'd see the vapors come streaming up out of the oil fill cap here, or if you're stopped at a light for a long time. Sometimes it would drift and maybe come out the front end, you know, come up high up against the hood and run a. So occasionally you'd see a little come out from the edge of the hood. But you got to be really running the car. Hard to get that to do that. But this is kind of what powers the Bel Air. It's a 250 horse. This engine came with a single 4-barrel hydraulic lift cam. It came with a single 4-barrel with a solid lift cam. I think they're 250, 280 horses, a 4-barrel. Now don't quote me on this, I'm assuming. I don't remember. The solid lift 4-barrel was, I think, 280 horse. Then they offered this engine with 3 2-barrel carburetors and a hydraulic cam, and I think that motor might have been 315 horse maybe, or somewhere around 300 horse. And then they offered this engine with triple 2-barrels and a special solid lifter cam, and that might have been the 315 or 320, 330 horse, somewhere around in there. You can correct me on it in the comments. I just don't remember. The 59 was also last year they offered fuel injection in a passenger car. It would have been a 283 cubic inch engine, and it would have had Rochester ramjet fuel injection. That was discontinued in mid 59 in the passenger cars, but was still offered in the Corvettes. There was a lot of different drivetrain options offered. This car would have came with originally a 235.5 cubic inch inline 6, high thrift 6. You could get in 59 an optional 170 horsepower 283 two-barrel. You could get a, I think it was 190, maybe 195 or around 200 horse with that 4-barrel Rochester 4-barrel square bore on it. Or you could get the 283 with the ramjet fuel injection, and I think that was 250 horse, maybe 280 horse, somewhere around in there. And then you could get this with the 4 versions I just described, and you could get a 3-speed on the column, 3-speed synchro mesh, is which this car has. You could get the 3-speed synchro mesh with overdrive. I think you could only get that with the high thrift 6 or the turbo fire 283 V8. And you could get a 4-speed Muncie manual transmission. You could get a Power Glide automatic. It was 2-speed automatic, low and drive, or you could get a Turbo Glide, which had triple stators in the torque converter, and it just used different sets of stators as to different gear ratio, so to speak, in the transmission. The transmission was basically a 1-speed, and as you accelerated, the engine, I had a 60 Chevrolet with a 283 two-barrel and a Turbo Glide. And you'd step on the accelerator, the engine RPM would pick up, the car would start going. The car was kind of dead out of the hole with the Turbo Glide. It didn't have a lot of get up and go out of the hole. But once you got rolling, the engine RPM would come down, the road speed would go up. That car got consistently 22, 23 miles a gallon. It was nice. There was no shifting. Where low would be on a Power Glide, it had a GR that stood for grade retard. If you were stopped at a light and you put it from drive to grade retard, you could feel the car like you're changing from reverse to drive. It would not go forward in grade retard. It was strictly for going down grades, so you wouldn't fade out your drum brakes. You'd pull it down into grade retard, and the transmission would brake the car and slow it down. That was one of the faults of the Turbo Glide. It caused excessive heat in the transmission, and heat is the #1 destroyer of transmissions, automatic transmissions. So if you didn't use grade retard, or very, very seldomly use grade retard, they were pretty, and they were on the 283, they were pretty good transmissions. If you put them on the 348 was just too much power and would just tear the Turbo Glide up. So anyway, I'm just kind of rambling on about what the options were. They offered a lot of different gear ratios and the differential. This particular car has the Muncie 318 3-speed manual in it, and it has a 3.36 to 1 gear ratio in the axle, which means the drive shaft will turn 3.36 turns to every 1 turn of the axle shaft. So this is the power plant in the 59 Chevy, which you'll see some woodward cruising. I'm going to start doing some cruising. I did a lap on Mother's Day. It was a Sunday, a beautiful Sunday evening. There was maybe a dozen cars out. I did have the camera mounted and on, but it was mounted in the back, and they didn't really show up well, the camera mount. Fiddled around. If you look at the one on the ride in the country, I had like a flexible mount. I put it in that little quarter window there. That's the camera mount. That one's a little more rigid, and it seems to hold the camera pretty good, but I don't want to use the same camera mounting for all the videos. I want to kind of mount it in different places, have a little bit more fun with the video camera, maybe even mount it on the roof or something, and see what happens. I had a flexible joint that seemed pretty rigid, but if you looked at my ride in the country in the beginning of it, the camera's bouncing around, and it was on that flex joint, and that flex joint just, this is the flex joint it was on. and it's rigid. You can't even move it with your fingers, but it bounced around enough to make that video all crazy. So, and here we'll go look at the battery while we're here too. This is not a reproduction of the original battery. That is a new Napa battery, and this is a topper that you can buy to fit the battery to make it look like the original battery. My dad bought me that for Christmas one year, and just it's on the battery. The battery that was in here originally that I had in for a long time, been in the car like 15 years, and this didn't fit it. When that battery finally went bad, I got this out and found the batteries that it would fit, and it said Napa. I took it to the auto parts and made sure it fit, and then I bought the battery and put it in the car and put this topper on it, and it makes it look like an authentic battery. But on the front of the battery here is where it says Napa and stuff. This is the way Chevrolet did put their batteries, so the posts were up here. This is the negative cable, goes over to the water pump. This is the positive, goes down to the starter solenoid. That's a little bit about what powers the car. I'll do some more videos on other issues with the things on the car. The power steering and the power brakes. I added them from another 59 Chevy parts car, a couple of different parts cars. I wanted factory original stuff on the car, but I'll do that in another video. So hopefully you enjoy my videos. If you want, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy.